We share. Oh, take a ride with me.
My name is Jibola Oladiran. I'm a Yoruba man from Oyo State in Nigeria, specifically from Ibadan. And most people look at me and they say I'm an Igbo man or a Delta man. Incidentally, I spent a whole lot of my life in the north, so I want to believe I'm from everywhere in Nigeria. I had a very eventful childhood, and as a boy growing up, I was really passionate about drawing. I liked sketching a lot. I liked mixing colors. I liked hanging out with older people who used to draw, and I drew a lot of my inspiration from them. Today I'm an architect. I am a 3D modeler. I also am a photographer. I'm a cinematographer. I'm a filmmaker, and I've been able to gather all these experiences together to be who I am today. The dream of every child is to grow up and be a successful person. Well, all of us had those dreams, but of course you get to a part in your life where you ask yourself the questions that are pertinent to that period in your life. Am I actually living my dream? I started asking myself that question not long after I finished my university. One of the turning points in my life as a child was when I was in the secondary school, and I was getting in trouble a lot because we used to do a whole lot of agricultural science while in school, in the secondary school, and I lost someone's hoe, one of my classmates, and then he seized my bag, and I was afraid to go to class. Because if I went to class then without my bag, then my teachers would ask me for my books, and I didn't have any books to write. So I started avoiding class. And then instead of staying away from school totally, I would go into the library. And I would sit in the library from the first period in school till break time at about 10:30 a.m. I would go for a break with everybody, and then I would go back at about 11, go back to the library and just start reading. And what was I reading? I really wasn't reading my lecture notes because I wasn't writing anything. I was reading stories. I'm talking about my fourth year in the secondary school. I was in SS1. I spent a lot of time reading stories. I would go from this encyclopedia to that encyclopedia, and after a while I started having a very rounded knowledge about world history, arts, writing, filmmaking, because we had a whole lot of books like that in the library. So I built my imaginative streak while I was running away from classes. And if you asked me then what the history of Canada was, I would tell you. If you asked me then what the history of the Yoruba people was, I would tell you. If you asked me then who Bayaji Da was, I would tell you. And you know, I just knew a whole lot about so many things. All these things helped me later in life because I was able to create my own storytelling styles. And then, of course, I used to draw, so I would be drawing in the library as well. When my classmate finally gave me my bag, of course, he gave me a bag with books that did not have any notes in them. So returning to class made me basically useless. I was useless when it came to school work, but when it came to having a beautiful level of creative imagery in my head, I was dangerous. So I finished secondary school, just getting over the finish line barely. I did quite well in my O-levels, barely. And then I went on to study architecture in the university, and that was where everything that I was learning while running away from classes in my secondary school came to play. Of course, as an architecture student, you would draw and sketch in your first year, and I was competing relatively well with the best in my class, until I realized that there were some of them who knew things I didn't know. These were professional artists. These were people who had mentors. These were people who had others to show them the way. So I started learning from them, and then I became much better. And if there's one thing I remember about my learning curve in the university, it was that most of what I am today, I am because I combined what others showed me with what I was reading in books, and then I now started creating my own style of architecture. I noticed that most of my classmates would design buildings with normal long span aluminium roofs, but I seemed to have a problem with roofs. I wasn't designing with roofs. Instead of using long span aluminium, I'll just create flat roofs and create styles of architecture that my classmates were usually not comfortable with. Unfortunately for them, I was able to get away with a lot of it, because even the lecturers found it strange that one of their students would be drawing something without the regular roofs. I think it was from my university days that I decided I would be different from everybody. So if everyone was designing this, I'll design that. If they were designing with this style, I'll design with that style. And then I fell into the habit I fell into in the secondary school. I was spending a whole lot of time in the library in my university as well, where I started learning more and more about architecture. Well, as I was finishing my first degree, which we called BTech, most other universities would use BSc, Bachelor of Science. For us, it was Bachelor of Technology, because I attended the Federal University of Technology. So our degrees were Bachelor of Technology, BTech, and the Master of Technology was usually MTech. And as I was finishing, I wanted to be one of the most popular architects in the world, one of the greatest. We had the opportunity to go for our youth service after the bachelor's degree, but for our university, especially architecture, you also had the option of going straight to do your MTech, which was your Masters of Technology, and after finishing that, you'd go to serve. So most of us finished our MTech and went to serve. And then after service, we now got out into the real world and realized that the real world was totally different from the world of our dreams. So I worked for a couple of companies after I finished my youth service, my national youth service. And then I wasn't really happy with the pay. I think the highest I received was about 25,000 Naira then, which wasn't much to go by. And I really wanted to settle down and start a family, and that wasn't going to help me at all. At about that time, which was sometime in 2005, one of the big telecoms companies in Nigeria came calling, and I went to work for them. The pay was fabulous. It was about 4 times what I was receiving where I was working before, which was attractive to me then. I was a young man trying to settle down, get a nice place to live, start up a family. So I worked with that telecoms company for a while. There was a time I resigned because I wasn't enjoying myself. In fact, I wasn't employed as an architect to start with. I was employed as a customer service representative, which required my picking calls and resolving customers' issues over the phone. And I just realized that I was dying. I wasn't fulfilling my potential. I was a very creative person. And when you're doing something like that, the opportunity to be creative is actually almost non-existent. You just had to follow the rules. So I resigned at some point, and then I went back. There was pressure, there was financial pressure because I wasn't used to standing on my own and jobs were not coming in. And what was I doing when I resigned? I went full-time into photography. I wasn't even into cinematography then. That was mainly photography. I also wasn't into architecture then because I think I had this aversion for working for anyone who would not pay me well at that point. And of course, clients would, I believed that clients would not want me to design anything for them since I didn't have so much of what you call experience architecture-wise. So I stuck with photography. I was beginning to find my footing when the company came calling again. And this time around, they said they would bump up my pay. And of course, I felt that wasn't too bad of an offer. It was fair enough. I went back. And then getting back, after a couple of years, I just knew it was an error. And because I was a very creative person, I would take some decisions that would make the management really unhappy. And it was more of it wasn't just customer service this time around, it was more of sales as well. So you want to make more sales this way because you had targets, and you would run foul of the policies of the company. And that's the fact that I couldn't do it the way I needed to do it, and that I was breaking company rules, was not what I wanted. So I got into trouble a number of times, and when the time came, I just had to leave. And I asked myself the question, what is it that you're going to fall back to? The truth is, at that time, I wasn't really sure. But luckily, I had gone into filmmaking on a very peripheral level. I wasn't very strong then, but immediately I left the company, I started building myself. In fact, I started making music videos. I went more into my photography. I didn't even go into architecture at all for a while then. And then I think it took me a couple of years after leaving there when I stumbled on 3D. Now, when I graduated, I had a little brush with 3D, but it wasn't giving me the kind of strength I needed. But when I hit 3D, after I left the company I was working with, I suddenly found my long-lost passion, because I realized I could actually create things. I could create anything I wanted to create on the computer. I could create human beings, I could create buildings, I could create cars, I could create whatever it was I needed to create. And then suddenly, everything just fell into place. And anyone from outside would not have understood what was going on in my head. But I realized that as an architect, sometimes when you need to pitch a particular project to a customer who is not even thinking about that project, you want to give him an idea of what the building would look like, not just the plan, but you want to show him in 3D. I was an architect. I loved designing fantastic buildings. 3D gave me the opportunity to be able to create the buildings I needed to create. The fact that I could create human beings in 3D meant I could put human beings in the buildings I was creating. The fact that I was a filmmaker, I could actually animate these human beings. I could make them move, I could make cars move, and actually create films, animated films with 3D. And that's why I said suddenly everything just clicked together, and since then I have not looked back. The advantage I have as a 3D filmmaker is that I have some background in photography and I have some background in filmmaking, so I know how to tell my stories. I am also an architect by training, so I know how to design buildings to suit the story I want to tell. Now, most recently, I've been able to create clothes in 3D. So if I create human beings, I can actually create the kind of clothes that I want them to wear. I'm African, so right now I can create African style clothing that my characters wear in the 3D animated films I'm creating. I've also created a pack of 3D clothes, African clothes, that I am about to start selling online. There's so many filmmakers all around the world that need African style clothing. Some of them would use them for their animated series that have to do with things like Wakanda style clothing. And because I'm one of the few people in the world who can now do that, I'm able to sell those packs to them. So I'm actually creating a solution to people's problems. I'm creating value that people need, and people pay me for that. Now, being on my own has been the greatest blessing I could have asked for, because no one tells me when to wake up. I don't need to be stuck in traffic if I don't have to be stuck in traffic. I don't need to wake up at 4 a.m. because I want to get to work before maybe like 6:30 a.m. I go out when I feel like. I have my office, I work from my office. If my clients need to see me, they come either to the house or to the office. I can decide to travel whenever I feel like. I can decide to go on vacation whenever I want to. I can do my work online. I mean, I can finish my job and send it to the clients online. I don't even need to meet them physically if I feel like. So having an employer, even though it has its advantages, is really not my thing, because I have lived that life. I lived that life for almost 20 years. I think it's fair for me to retire from that life if I want to. I've paid my dues. I would also want to say that whoever needs to step out from that place where they feel they're choking, they can step out if they know what it is they want to do when they step out. Because one of the most dangerous things is stepping out because you're frustrated and then you really don't have anything to do. Yes, you feel that you have the time to think about what you're going to do, but you'll have that luxury if you don't have a family that you're catering for, if you don't have bills to pay, if you're still in your parents' house, or you have a place you're staying and you're alone, if you are renting a house and you've paid for 1 or 2 years, you know there's no one chasing you out of your apartment, you can decide to stay for 1 or 2 years trying to figure out what to do. However, if you are a married man who has a family to take care of and your income is actually paying your bills, if your income is paying your bills, then you are going to need to save up so that if you have to step out, you have something to fall back to when there are no jobs paying the bills. So I really would not advise anyone to just step out into a vacuum, especially if you are a family person. Well, if it is a woman who feels, well, the husband is working and she has support, I think by all means, if that's what you want to do, then please go ahead because you have some support. But if you don't have any support, if for instance you're a single mother, or for some reason you are the breadwinner of the family, maybe your husband is not making enough and you feel you want to step out so that you can do so you can try to figure things out, then it's quite dangerous. And the truth is, you can actually step out and you get better perspective, even if you don't have anything you're doing. That is, of course, that happens. There are people who really don't have anything to do, but they just need to think, and they need space, they need time to think. And I think space and time sometimes gives you better perspective, and you will be able to run around to get opportunities that would not have been open if you had not left where you were. But before one steps out, my advice, my very honest advice is try to have something that you know you want to do before you step out. It's always important. You can't just step out into a vacuum because you will be depressed. So my story has been a very long and interesting journey. I cannot say it's been the most pleasant, because the truth is there were times when I didn't have a car. There was a time I had 2 cars. I had to sell them because I needed to pay bills. I needed to have my feet on the ground. There was a time that it was my wife who was the mainstay of the family. I wasn't the breadwinner. And what happens to most men is they feel embarrassed when it is the woman that has to take care of things in the house. Of course, that comes because the man believes he's the one that should take care of the bills in the house. But there are times when the man cannot do that. And we sometimes need to be honest enough to ourselves to know, is that what you want? If you cannot stand your wife taking care of bills for a while, then don't step out, because you will be frustrated. I was quite fortunate that my wife never made it an issue. She never made me feel less of a man because she was handling most of the bills then. And that was because she knew that there was something I was working on and that I would get there. And when the time came, she was the better for it. I'm very grateful that I had a supportive partner, and she still is very supportive. I'm still not there yet where I should be, but I have already passed the most dangerous part of the journey. I'm not scared anymore today. We still have bills that we struggle to pay sometimes. Of course, that happens. We still have those bills, but one is not scared anymore because we see that the potentials are already being maximized, and we are already getting to that point that we wanted to reach. So I would say the journey would not be as easy as you think it would be. For some people, the journey is just perfect. They just get into some form of business and they break even. Things just happen for them and everything works. But sometimes you need to struggle. For instance, I resigned sometime in 2016. That was when I left the job. In fact, when I left, it wasn't like I wanted to leave, right? But I wanted to be ready when I was leaving. I wasn't ready. So it was like I was thrown into the deep part of the ocean, and it was like the only option I had was I had 2 options, swim or drown. I didn't know how to swim. So I was just thrashing my legs. I'll do this, I'll do that. Some of the things I did then didn't work out. In fact, I made some music videos for some people, and it was basically like free. And I didn't have the equipment I needed then because I wasn't buoyant enough to have the equipment to run the music videos. So it was basically like I was doing these things for free. And when the time came, when they had money to get big boys to shoot their video, they forgot about me. Those were some dark times, very trying times. You just see that they've made another music video and you didn't even know they were going to make a music video. and you ask yourself if it was worth it. But all that experience made me stronger, also made me better, made my my work ethic, made it more professional. I kept at what I was doing. I didn't let up because from childhood, that had been my passion. Colors, visuals, audio. That has been my passion since I was a child. But I didn't know that everything would culminate to what it is I'm doing today. It's been, when I look back now, if someone had asked my 8-year-old self, what do you think you'd be doing when you are maybe 45? I'll be like, wow, I think I'm going to be running the biggest movie industry, movie company in the world. For me, then it was just about visuals, colors, and audio. As a grown-up now, everything looks clearer. This is what I should be doing at this particular point in my life. But it has taken me this long to realize it. So I want to thank you for following me on my boring, interesting journey. It's my personal story. I know different people have different stories, but I am grateful for the journey I had to take to get to this point. I hope I get better, and very soon I hope I'll be able to give you an update of this story to tell you, that place I wanted to be there, I think I'm there now. But thank you very much. My name once more is Jibola Oladiran. Thank you. God bless you.